Dear future Grandmasters, this is day 55. Today we've had a great match. I've played against Wesley So. If you don't know who that is, he's one of the best players in the world. He's been at the top for very long. He was the global chess champion, one of the best players in Rapid and Blitz. And I actually have barely played against him online. But today I had the opportunity to play a 4-game match against him. And as you can guess, if I'm analyzing it, I must have played pretty well. So let's start with the first game. He goes d4, knight f6, knight c3. You know, he's trying to get slick and play my own opening against me. But little does he know, I have a little surprise in the story. I go d5, bishop f4, I go a6. Again, maybe stopping knight b5, he goes e3, and now I go h6. You may be thinking, what am I doing? In the opening, you're supposed to develop your pieces, you know, not just move your pawns. The point is that, you know, now that I have bishop f5, I have this sort of square that I can come back to, and I'm sort of waiting for him to commit to a move. He goes h4.
Huh?
Yeah, he doesn't really seem to know what he's doing. Bit of a weird waiting move. Now I break in the center with c5. I could play c5 here, but including the move h6, h4 has an improvement. Because with h6, h4, c5 takes here, h3 to kick the bishop, but now you don't have this. And h4 is going to be weakened later on. Here I go e6, knight e5, bishop e2, queen e2, bishop c5. Regaining the pawn, knight d3, bishop d6, castles, e5 here. Here I should just castle. I should just play normally. I played queen d7 because I wanted to stop g4. He plays g4 anyways. I take the pawn, we trade the queens, he takes back the d5 pawn, I castle my king, materials even. Bishop g3, I go f5. He goes knight b6, king b8, knight c4, bishop b7, he goes f3. Obviously he's hoping to win the pawn. Now I can take and go f4, forking these two pieces. He plays bishop f4, ef4, knight c4, bit of a weird move. I go knight d4, attacking the f3 pawn, knight back to g2, rook h8. Again, I've got great pieces. The king is a bit weird. He can't go rook g1 because of knight e2. He goes c3, I give a check. I go rook to e3, attacking the knight. Knight comes back, I go knight to g3. Maybe the rook will come to e2, rook e1, rook e8. You can't take because I fork the two knights. Knight d3, knight f5, attacking the pawn. He goes here, I go rook e7. Again, I want him to go here, so then I go knight g3 and take the pawn. He goes rook h1, I go rook e2, again threatening knight f3. He goes king b3, blundering knight e3. The rook can't move because the knight is hanging. He goes knight c1, I just take the rook. And now I go knight f2, attacking the rook and the knight. If you try to defend the knight, now I go knight d3. Again, the rook has to move. And then I just take a free knight. Here he goes rook h2, tried to pin. Here the simplest win would have been to play knight d3, because if rook takes e2, knight c1, check, forking, full piece. But as I just play rook e4, takes knight e4. And now I've got a rook, I got knight and bishop and a pawn. This pawn's going to be running. He goes h5, f3, next f2, then knight d2. And that pawn's going to make a queen, and I'm going to win the game. So this was a very nice game. It goes e4, c5, it's a knight off, d6, d4, take, knight c3. Usually I play the bishop g5 now, he goes bishop g7, bishop c4, queen b6. I play queen b2, he could have taken this pawn, I don't know why he didn't, but you sort of have to take this pawn. He goes e6, playing normally, I go castles, bishop b7, I go f4, castles, g4, continuing the attack, h6. And this was an interesting moment, I actually wanted to play h4. It's a very thematic move, because if you take knight g4, I guess just queen g2, and queen h3 is just checkmating. I don't know why I was too afraid to do that. Instead I took the bishop and I went h4. Now my opponent trades off with the pieces and goes e5. I take the pawn and I go g5. Knight goes to e5, I retreat my bishop back to e3. He goes takes, bishop e6, and now he blunders and he's hoping that I can just take, and rook e8. And this position, I am up a pawn, but let's say knight d5, f3. He's got a really strong pawn. The king is, this is weak, and I don't really have much here. But actually, instead of that, I can sacrifice the exchange, takes. And you try to block with the knight. Now I go g6. And then with the piece you have to block. Here I went knight d5, f3. I'm threatening, knight takes a4. I give a check, and I go back here. Now my opponent, obviously I'm threatening checkmate. If the king comes back here, then I can go knight d6. If king f8, I take, and now I can play g6. The point being that if you just move this, I have a check, and I take the rook. So the knight is forced to this ugly square, h6. Now I can go bishop d5, threatening the pawn. If you defend the pawn, then I go rook f1, take the pawn, numbers of 2 pawns. He had to find king at e8, which is quite a difficult move. And actually the best move is just go king d2 here, very slowly. Now the rook has to go to f8, very ugly. I go king e3 maybe, or I go rook h7. And it has to find, the computer says f2. here, G6. And now I go King G2, GF, EF, and now I'm down a rook for 3 pawns, but I have these double pass pawns, and still the position is equal here. It's absolutely insane. So I put some good practical pressure. Anyways, he takes this. I bring the king in. I give a check, and I block. And I have this sort of weird position, it's sort of mutual zugzwang. I'm not sure what to do. I'm sort of waiting. Eventually, he sort of lashes out with a4. I just take the pawn. Because if you take, you can't really approach this pawn because the bishop sort of controls things. If you're here, I just push. And here, again, he was getting low on time. I have 58 seconds to 31 seconds. He just resigns. So this was a very nice second win. The other 2 games are quite boring draws. I'll go through them quickly. He played the Petrov. We went for this line where you trade the queens. We traded quite a bit of pieces. There's a lot of trades. Nothing much happened. I had one maybe small chance around here. I should play rook b4, because if you take on b5, I take. And look at, let's say king d6. Now I go g4, forking the rook and the knight, and I've just won this b7 pawn. But after this, everything was just sort of a draw. And then this last game was also quite a boring draw. It was the Najdorf. He played this sort of bishop g4 system that Aronian likes quite a bit. The knight for the bishop. It's very, thematic to sort of attack on this side of the board. We trade the queens. He goes f5, he goes c4, cutting the bishop. Knight f5, rook e8, bishop h6. I go knight e4, giving up the bishop. 2 knights for 2 bishops. My knights are absolute monsters. I'm kicking the knight out. d5, I take. And eventually we get sort of this endgame, where he wins this pawn, but the rook is pinned, and you can't really move this because of rook takes d2. Rook takes d2, knight e4, winning. So he kind of has to go g4 to try to kick the piece out, but now I have many moves. I can go e5, knight e4, pinning this, rook comes here, king e6, and I'm down 2 pawns here, but I have just such activity. Like if you go bishop f4, I can go rook a1, I can go g5, but again, all this pawns sort of collapsing, and my pieces are so much more active. Eventually, he ended up going d5, knight e4. I win back the pawn. We trade the rooks, we trade the pawns, and it happens to draw. So this was a very nice sort of 3-1 score against one of the best blitz players in the world. I just really enjoyed beating these people because it really destroys a narrative that I'm, this terrible player with no talent who shouldn't be invited anywhere. Like to me, either I'm too good that you're going to accuse me of things I'm not doing, or I'm not good enough, so I'm incapable of performing well. So, the narrative is collapsing, and the chess is speaking for itself, and I'm feeling very good going into Grenke. I just can't wait to get back to the board. Playing chess is what gives me true bliss, and obviously Title Tuesday once a week is not enough to satisfy my competitive hunger. So to all the future Grandmasters, I'll see you guys in the next video. Please comment to let me know what it can be improved, and if you watched the entire time, thank you so much, and comment to let me know that you are a future Grandmaster who's working hard and is supporting the journey. Thank you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.